And at that,
Sure.
I went into that like, okay, this is a race. We're going to race it. And that was the first year that Salsa had the chaise lounge. Are you familiar with this?
Yep.
This
Yep.
enormous red velvet, like Victorian era looking couch that they just drug out to the middle of nowhere on these beautiful clay red roads and dumped this like Queen Victoria looking piece of furniture there. And if you stopped briefly, they'd take a picture. And I just missed the plot completely. Like, I was in the front group and I got dropped from that group and I was like, oh, I was like racing for like top 10 and like saw the couch and just boom, straight past. And that was, and then like that evening saw that the guys who went 1-2 stopped for a hot second and took their picture. And like that was the only thing that people who were not there would care about. Like, do they care about placing? Nobody cares. But like, oh, I'm doing it wrong. I'm totally doing it wrong.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome to the Stable Cyclist podcast, where we talk about bikes, life mentality, and when the occasion arises, we will always deep dive into mental health. It is the month of May, which means the gravel gospel is upon us. And in the studio today, joining us shortly, will be one of America's greatest gravel evangelists, Ben Delaney. But before we get Ben in here, I want to give a shout out to two new partners here with the Stable Cyclist podcast and just in general with what we are doing here at the Stable Cyclist, and that is Dawn to Dusk, who make amazing bottle cages and bags, and also to Wahoo Fitness, who of course make amazing head units and trainers and lots of other awesome stuff. Of course, the Stable Cyclist podcast is sponsored by Flow Formulas. If you have a big gravel race coming up or any kind of other gravel event in your future, you want to make sure you're fueled correctly, and Flow Formulas is what you want in those bottles, whether it's the endurance mix or their gel mix or their endurance chews, or afterwards using their endurance recovery mix. Flow Formulas has you covered, and you can save a little bit off your total cart amount when you check out if you use the code JohnPeter15 at checkout. One more thing before we get Ben in here. We have been growing leaps and bounds over the past 4 months, which means there's a pretty good chance that you are new here. And if you are new here and you like what you hear, please do us a favor and on YouTube, give us a thumbs up and make sure you're subscribed. And if you're listening on Spotify and Apple, please give us a 5-star review, please, and thank you. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, leave us a review as well. All right, that was a lot. Let's get Ben Delaney into that hot seat. Well, like, as far as I'm concerned, I think there's two great gravel evangelists in the world, or at least in the U.S., and one of them is Nick Legan, obviously.
My man.
But you are closely behind him as far as I'm concerned, as from what I've listened to as well. I think you kind of hold yourself in that regard as well. So, yeah, I guess that's kind of where we could get started, is how did you find this amazing sport of gravel? I don't need the full rundown. People can go listen to the King of the Ride with Ted King. Your interview on there is great. You've had some other good interviews with Andrew Vance. People can check that out. But I want to know just how do we get into gravel to turn you into this disciple, essentially?
I blame Nick Legan wholeheartedly. Like any decent, sensible person, I just made fun of gravel for the longest time as a ridiculous activity. Like, why would you do that to yourself? If you want to do cyclocross, sure, have at it. That's like an hour's plenty to wreck your bicycle and your body and your brain. Why do you need to be out there for hours and hours? And Nick and I were working together at Delaney back in the day, and he went to what is now called Unbound Gravel and came back just fired up. And it was so funny because, at the time, Delaney was covering pro road racing. Like, that's what the game was, right? And gravel was like, well, what is this? He went and covered it. And every piece of evidence he would put forth as to why gravel was a cool thing and why Unbound was a cool thing, we would take that same evidence at face value and put it right into the box of like, no, that sounds terrible. Like, so that was the firsthand introduction. But then I went and did some of it and started drinking the Kool-Aid, and now I'm serving the Kool-Aid. And I still do make fun of it as a silly thing. But yeah, I mean, to give you a very long answer to a short question.
No, you're good. What time is this around? Is this like 2013, 2014, or was it later than that?
Yeah. That sounds about right. I was just at the Mid-South, another race that's changed names. And that was the first proper gravel race that I did with another good fellow, Spencer Pallison. He and I did that. And that was the event for me where I was like, aha, I get it. If you want to race your face off, there's skinny kids at the front who will serve you up humble pie. If you want to just see if you can finish the thing and do so on a fat bike with a flask of whiskey that you've had a custom down tube holder made, like you're going to have company there, and then there's like everybody else in between. So yeah, like 2014, 15, 16, somewhere around there, yes.
By the time you started to get into it, were the bikes, I remember stumbling across some publication that Gerard Vrooman had put out after he had been at El Monzo, and it was full of all these like beautiful pictures. This would have been around 2012, 2013. That's kind of when I, first was introduced to it. But the bikes back then, Ben, were like, we were all on 32s.
Yes.
And a lot of them were cross bikes with canty brakes.
Yes.
By the time you started doing things and by the time you get to Mid-South, was there some progression in that, or was that basically still what things were at?
It was starting to creep from there. So I was at Spencer and I were at Mid-South and some others because Vittoria was rolling out a gravel tire. And we were sort of like, gravel tires, this is ridiculous. It was a great tires, by the way, Trano dry. So yeah, it was starting to move from like a hodgepodge of stuff to gravel specific stuff. And one thing that I continue to love about it is that we can't agree on what the heck gravel is. Like whether it should exist at all, whether should it have its own stuff, if it should have its own stuff, what that is, what that should cost. And that's part of why I started a YouTube channel, was because it's fertile ground,
Yeah.
I still love, road racing and riding road. I still, probably am on pavement more than I'm on dirt. But it's pretty well established what good is there, like.
Sure.
It's like airplane wings. There's a pretty established understanding of like what a good airplane wing is, and there's not going to be a lot of variation because like that's the shape that works, and it's kind of the same for road. Whereas gravel is just still crazy, wild.
Yeah,
and I love the. I don't want to call it conflict, but just the kind of the push and pull of our weird little microculture within a weird microculture.
100%. You mentioned your Velo News. You have kind of an arc. I just talked to James Wong like last week. That episode will be out in April, and he has a similar like arc. I think you probably have moved around a little more. I think you were quoted as saying you and Josh Patterson were in like a firing contest for a while.
Josh wins. Josh wins hands down.
But tell us a little bit, just because I think people don't maybe understand how you pivoted into YouTube. Pivoted from where? And so what did that arc of your journalism career look like?
Right. Who is this random dude on JP's podcast and why he's yapping? Journalism was what I was going for, thinking that, bike journalism in particular, right? Like went to University of Mexico, have a piece of paper that says print journalism, started working for Bicycle Retail and Industry News, a trade publication, and then was lucky enough to get a job at Velo News and bounced around to a few different places. And I always thought that if, when I eventually grew up, I could go back and work for newspapers as a serious journalist. But two things happened. One, newspapers went away, and two, I never grew up. So I've just been in the bike media landscape for going on 30 years. And that's all been on the media side, except for a hot minute at Specialized. Was in global marketing there for a bit, which was a hoot, but also it was a hat that didn't fit completely. I'm just too feral. I can't stay on brand. I just wander off set in the middle of like the presentation. So
how did you fight that feeling then when you were at, like, obviously with YouTube, you can wander wherever you want. and as long as people follow you, you can go there. But how did you kind of fit that feeling into a box while you were at Velo News and doing the other kind of work you were doing?
Um,
Because you were the editor for a while, correct?
yes, yeah, and yeah, I was the editor-in-chief at Velo News for a number of years, and then the bike industry being such a small sandbox in the game of musical chairs, I ended up back there a few years later in different roles, editorial director and different things. But yeah, I love the teamwork of creative groups. And this is probably something you can relate to. It's like it's a kind of double-edged sword. Like being able to do whatever you want is a cool thing, but I now miss while doing my own thing on YouTube. I miss having a creative team to bounce ideas off of, and so I'm not. I'd like to think, even as antisocial as I am, like most bike riders, I'm not, completely a Unabomber isolationist. And I think kind of how I scratch some of that itch for collaboration is kind of in the way you do. Like one of the cool things about having a podcast is it gives you an excuse to call up anybody or email anybody. Like,
Yeah.
hey, you want to come on my show? Like they might not respond, but can't hurt to try. And so that was part of the initial draw for me to journalism. It's just the excuse to walk up to or call up, people within your sphere that you were supposed to cover and chat with them. So that's a through line for me.
Yeah. How much of that time was spent overseas doing stuff, whether it was covering races or covering random, weird bike shows?
My wife would say way too much. I would say maybe not quite enough. Like the more you work your way up the tiny little totem pole that used to be bike editorial, the more you're sitting in the chair, and reporters are out covering this stuff. It turns out the Velo News, based in Boulder, Colorado, which is a great place to ride bikes, is on the wrong side of the ocean for covering professional road cycling. I mean, we did have a nice little moment or two, or decade of, tour to Georgia, tour of Missouri, tour of California, tour of Utah, et cetera. So like we had, as you know, some solid bike racing here for a while. But yeah, if you want to go to the big show, it was on the other side of the ocean. So I certainly loved going over there for some of it. Like I've got my Ronda shirt on, and I loved Holy Week, Flanders through Roubaix. To me, that was the pinnacle because I could both. The racing's super cool, the area's super cool, and I could both cover those two races and scale the press in between, and then also sneak out for bike rides myself in what, coming from the U.S., I found to just be a paradise for cycling, and that there's you can ride kind of anywhere, and like a lot of the roads feel like the road version of single track, just tiny little goat roads and super flowy, and but not so much riding. It turns out, like covering professionals, your job is to sit there and cover them. So often I come back from the tour, people are like, "What's it like to ride bikes in France?" I'm like, well, I have no idea. I was sitting in a press car or on my butt in the press room, like eating donuts the whole time, watching skinny guys ride their bikes. I don't know.
I have not heard you talk about this really yet. In all the research I did ahead of this, you're at Velo News when the outside monster VC money comes through and the sword swings, essentially. If I'm right on the timeline there, correct?
Yep.
Okay. So between then and, like that happens to like Kaylee Fretz, and he goes and starts Escape Collective, and he's like, I want to keep doing the same thing I'm basically doing.
Yes.
For you step out of that and you say, I'm going to pivot over here to YouTube. And I want to kind of hear the initial like process of like, I lost my job. What the hell do I do here? It doesn't seem like this seems like it's a continual thing, not just a like, well, this is a one-time deal. I'll go find a job in the same field and go again.
Sure. Yeah, and I can give you a couple of iterations of that. Because as you mentioned, Josh Patterson and I like so many who've been working in media have been laid off. I've been
Yeah.
laid off twice. Once was by the group that runs cycling, that then ran Cycling News and Bike Radar, tried to make a push to increase the U.S. presence. That didn't work. So got canned there, and that's when I went to work for Specialized. At the time, I was like, maybe I should try this YouTube thing, in part because it's a different medium, and I felt like I was kind of going in circles with taking pictures of the same stuff, writing the same stories like year after year.
Sure. Yeah.
And I felt like that would be a growth opportunity. But I was also kind of chicken to start it, and then got a job with benefits. Like, great, do that. Second layoff was from outside, where I had a few different roles, and the last one of them was cycling membership director, where I was tasked with trying to figure out how the heck do we get money from readers. And a lot of people out there in the bike world are bashing on outside, and I'm certainly happy to join in that fun some of the time. But I'm also, a little sympathy for the devil. I'm also keen to remind folks that like outside didn't create the media landscape. Like part of the reason why all these brands are under the outside umbrella is because like the bottom fell out for all of us. Like the business is broken and nobody can figure out how to make money. So like were I to run outside, would I do things differently? Yeah, of course. I've got different opinions on things, and I was kicking and screaming when I was in there. But it's not as if outside approached all these media titles that were just blossoming and making more money than they know what to do with, and stole them away and chopped off their heads and threw everybody out the window. It was like the businesses were sputtering, right?
Yeah.
And so I guess part of why I went with YouTube was like, well, there's a built-in audience there and a few different ways to get revenue. And I was kind of bearish on asking viewers for money, in part because I'm a lousy salesperson, and in part because I've been doing that for a while. And I mean, it's ironic that the audiences for many media titles are bigger than they've ever been, but the expectation for so many folks is if it's online, it's free. Like only a sucker would pay for something, whether that's a podcast or a YouTube video or a web story. You're like, why pay for that? You've got seemingly infinite options. And that's starting to change. We're seeing things like, I pay for a New York Times subscription because I don't want all the things. I don't want all the news from all the people. I just want like some good stuff that I can trust. So it's changing, but we went from, in the bike world, you own the audience, and so you get subscription money because if people want to know about bike racing, they've got to buy a magazine. And then you own the ad money because if bike brands want to talk to the dorks who would buy stretchy pants and bikes, like that's the only place to go is like buying advertising. And then all of a sudden, like those two revenue streams are gone. And that's the fundamental situation that we found ourselves in, more than 10 years ago, and we're still trying to figure out like, how do we make this work? We know bike nerds are still interested in cycling, and we'd like to believe that there's something to be said for having some experience in storytelling, in whatever medium that is. How the heck do we make a business out of this? And my answer was like, well, let's give this YouTube thing a whack.
Yeah. You mentioned those revenue streams, and I think I shouldn't say everybody. I think a lot of people who do content and bike review type stuff like you do, at some point had this existential crisis, probably 5-6 years ago, when you realized the stuff we are reviewing is for the same people that are paying us for ads. And I want to know, like, for you, was there like a line in the sand moment where you were like, oh my gosh, like what we're doing isn't really ethical? And how did you overcome that? Or was it just this realization that we shouldn't be doing this, and let's try and figure out how to, like you with your YouTube channel, you don't take ads or sponsorship from bike brands so that you can give truthful bike reviews. And I kind of want to hear the evolution of getting to that point, because whether you're like hardcore into bikes or you listen to my podcast because you're interested in the stories, like that is an ethical dilemma, I think, that a lot of people will run into at some point in their life, whether they're working in bikes or in some other industry, where they have this realization of like, crap, we're maybe getting money from the people we're supposed to be critical of.
Sure. Yeah, I mean that's been a delicate dance and a challenge for a while, and it's been interesting to see how different titles dealt with that. And now that problem in many ways has been removed from the media brands, because the bike brands are like, why would I pay for advertising on a bike site when I could just go to Google or Meta and get that same audience for a fraction of the cost with much higher analytics packages and all that. So, but yeah, that's always been there. And in some titles, it was pretty blatant. Like we call it pay to play. Like you buy a full page ad and your bike is going in the next magazine. A lot of places it was more subtle. Like magazines would have a publisher, and then on one side is the sales team, one was the editorial team, and the publishers would often be saying things like, "Can't you just show these guys some love? Like they're supporting us." And at Velo News, I never had like gross pressure from any of the publishers, which I very much appreciate. Even though I know we gave them heartburn and caused them to lose money sometimes. And I came across a YouTube video, I believe from Bike Shop Girl. What was, scandalous titles always work well on YouTube, and this was like the real truth about the bike media. And she was like, well, everything's paid for, everything. You see a top 10 list, and that whole list is paid for. And I was like, what the hell are you talking about? And then she had like a bit of a Trump line of like, well, maybe not all of them, like some they're rapists and they're murderers, and like, well, maybe some are good too, I don't know. But like didn't list any particular titles, but just like threw the whole bike media under the bus. Like,
sure,
you guys are all completely corrupt, and but I'm not. And so like with my YouTube thing, my struggle there is how to convey what you said quickly. Like, no, I don't take money from the bike brands, because that would be an advertisement, not a review. How to convey that quickly without coming across like a sanctimonious, I'll bleep myself out, something or other, and I don't know if a lot of people care. And I think a lot of people just like, they want to be entertained. Like, just show me shiny things. But I don't know if it's just because I'm old fashioned or like the journalism background, but for so much of us, money defines success, right? Like just a gut check, like, how well are you doing? Like, well, how much money do you have? And with the YouTuber podcasts or even web stories, a lot of the analytics is like, well, how many clicks did you get? How many eyeballs did you get? And that's, it's just this weird squirrel brain thing that even those of us on the edit side who don't necessarily see a direct financial correlation to that, like we just really, you want to focus on what you think success is. And for content, if success is, money, if your money is tied to like getting paid for reviews, that's totally going to skew your thing. Or even getting like kickbacks for sales of stuff. So I may be going about it completely wrong, but that's
I guess that's my next.
I'm trying to pursue here.
Yeah, I guess that's my next question. Like, Ben Delaney, how do you define success in what you're doing right now? And you've been at this a little over 2 years, if I did the math right, and if I didn't, tell me otherwise. But how is this going for you, and how do you define how it's going for you?
Yeah, there's two metrics. There's the one that my wife cares most about, which is like how much I'm contributing to the household. And that one is doing well. And then the other's more vanity metrics, some from my delicate little ego and some for how others judge me, which is like, how many subscribers do you have? How many views does each video have? And there's some correlation there, but they're not always tied together. So, I started, a little over 2 years ago, and for the first year I was doing content marketing for my buddy Frank at Fast Cat Coaching. Because, as I mentioned, my wife wants me to contribute to the house. So, like, that was how I was making money while I was getting some traction and trying to figure out how the heck to edit videos. And then was able to go full time with it. So yeah, this is my second year full time with it. So yeah, it's going well. I wish I had some and I don't know how you feel about this. If you could somehow tap into some magic formula that would cause the algorithm to blow up and have all your podcasts get huge views.
I know this. I know this, Ben. Anything I put on with Dylan Johnson explodes. It's like printing money, as I'm sure you are aware also. But yeah, there's that, like, I guess that was a question I have written down here is like, there are things to go chase where we know they're going to get clicks. And some of them are totally within maybe the sphere of what we're doing. And some of them are like maybe a little outside and some of them are a lot outside. How do you decide what's okay to go after and what, like, I think you've described it before as like cat videos, basically. Like, how do you decide like what cat video to chase and which one to be like, actually, that's not who I am at all, and we're not going to do that?
Yeah. I mean, I keep all my stuff like in my lane, so to speak, like talking about bike nerd stuff. When I was editor of VeloNews, I would counsel some of writers, like, let's do both things. Do your passion projects that you're fired up about, that you invest a lot of time in, and maybe it'll stick, but maybe it won't, maybe the world won't care, with the things that we know are going to have a high yield. Like, Peter's, this is dated, but I just remember, like, especially I sent the press release about Peter Sagan has new shoe color, and here's a bunch of like glamorous pictures, and it'll take us 12 minutes to flip that story, and the page views will just go gangbusters. And then here's this project that you've spent a couple weeks researching. You have all these different sources. We've run it through, a bunch of different teams internally to make sure it's tight, and the world's reaction is like, for the most part. But then like some people are really stoked on that. They're like, thank you for doing this. This is not just one more site doing the Peter Sagan has a new shoe color thing.
Right.
So I guess I try to tell myself that sometimes when I'm feeling discouraged, like, why this man, I put a lot into this video and barely got any clicks. So like I was at Valley of Tears gravel race in Texas a couple weeks ago, and did a few videos out of there. And the one I spent the most time on had the least amount of traffic, which was a bike review. And I'm hoping that will, like, one of the reasons why I do gear stuff is because like people are interested in shiny things, and it's not news, right? Like news is a rush, but like yesterday's news is yesterday's news, whereas a review on a bike will track for a while. So I'm hoping that this Cannondale Topstone video will do a bit better, but the videos that did go really well, you mentioned Dylan Johnson, like I had a 7 or 8 minute chat with the guy. It spent about 3 minutes shooting B-roll after I talked to him. Spent about an hour editing that, and that was, did 100,000 views.
Right.
So yeah, more Dylan, I guess, is the answer. JP.
Well, and that's, like you said, there are those things where the narrative doesn't always hold up over time because it is news. And, I think about when I started my own YouTube channel, one of the first videos I ever did was just like an unboxing of my Canyon mountain bike. And that thing is still getting
just
hundreds and
along,
thousands. Right? Yeah, it's just rolling along. And it's like 3 or 4 years ago, but it's just evergreen content. And was that a little weird for you? Obviously, you were into bikes, you were doing the bike reporting, but was it weird to you to pivot into like, I'm going to become like not tech guy quite like James Huang, but like I'm going to become a tech type person in what I'm doing? Because I think a lot of people that just know you from YouTube would be like, oh yeah, Ben Delaney, he's a bike tech guy.
Yeah. And James would be like, no, he's not.
Right. James would just point to a tool on your wall and be like, what's that do? And you'd be like, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I have no idea. Yeah, it's a shiny decoration. Yeah. I mean, a couple things, and some of it was just like the personal interest. I love riding bikes. I want to play with them. I want to get out there, and I enjoy doing it. I mentioned I still love pro cycling, but I do not follow it 365 days a year. You know, I'm a fair weather fan. Like I'm stoked to watch some highlights here and there, and then watch classics and the tour mountain stages. You know, but
Yep.
but almost every single day I want to get out there and ride my own bike. You know,
Sure.
and so that there was that selfish part of it, and then the gear part. You know, for me, a bit of an aha moment was pivoting from, not pivoting, but maybe like being dragged by the heels into the new world of analytics. You know, newspaper and magazine analytics consisted of sales. You know, like what's good? Did we succeed or not? Like the only like hard data you had to go on was like how many issues sold.
Sure.
And at Velanews, it was the formula was like put Lance on the cover, sell a bunch. Put anybody else on the cover, don't sell as much. Put a female on the cover, don't sell any. And it's like, well, what does that mean about the feature on page 40? You know, like so it was just a lot of just gut feeling. A bunch of people sitting around a table, like, what do we think is cool? And like, there's something to be said for that. Like, people are in the culture, like that counts for something. Gut feeling counts for something. But
100%.
but having like actual analytics on all your stories, how many people are reading this one? How excuse me, how many seconds are they spending? How many minutes are they spending? You know, what size monitor? Like that. So when I went to Bike Radar and Cycling News, you know, I got a fire hose of information. And like, oh, okay. Maybe the world is not the way we see it. So you know, the Bike Radar corollary to your Canyon unboxing was, you know, the best story year after year at Bike Radar, which we wouldn't even redo. We just like put a new, like fresh, you know, photo on there. If that every year, it was how to lose belly fat by cycling. That story just crushes it because that's what like people are searching for.
Yeah.
You know, so we'd be having these like esoteric fights about like a gram here or this design there or some aerodynamic thing, and like, and just some nerds care, but mostly people are just like, yeah, I'm a little overweight and I want to lose weight on the bike. How do I do that? So you know, all that to say, with gear, yeah, people are interested in themselves and they want to play with stuff, just like I want to play with stuff. So you know, that seemed like, you know, potentially successful, a common denominator I could deal with, and as a one-man band, like something where I could kind of compete, like on my own terms. Like, like with news, you know, as an individual, you can't compete. I'm not really interested in doing that.
You're not interested in a faceless bicycle news or YouTube channel with daily news narrated by Ben Delaney?
No, 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 not so much.
You did mention there, I think, what the core, you know, we started this conversation with gravel. We're going to come back to gravel now. The core of this idea being people just want to get out on bikes and they want to be healthier by and large.
Yes.
And while guys like you and I might worry about, you know, being razor skinny for a race or something in performance, at the end of the day, I think we all just like getting out on our bikes. And is that what is so appealing about gravel and drawing more people in? And or is it just a safety thing compared to the road? Or why do you see this as being so attractive to people, Ben?
I think there's not excuse me, there's not just a single answer. I mean, we can see if you're doing like a, you know, sociology thing on like how do we define these different groups. There's some that are pretty clear and recognizable to us as you know, bike nerds. There's like the roadies who they want to race and there are no more road races. Like, well, I guess we're doing this now. And similarly, there's like some mountain bikers that are looking for something maybe a little less technical, lower key, more social. But then there are like, God bless them, there are actually like fresh blood, new people trying the thing out. And I think it's because it's not so intimidating as like Red Bull Rampage. Is that what mountain biking is? Like, that's not for me. Like, I'm just looking for something like an hour in between before I have to pick my kids up from soccer to do. Like, I'm not trying to do a backflip off a 60-foot drop. And if road racing is Tour de France, 60 miles an hour in in your underwear down a mountainside. Like, no, I live in Houston. Like, what are you talking about? But the image or an image that gravel has presented is like, yeah, here's a fun thing you can do with friends or by yourself, or meet some new friends, and you can do it however you like. And analogy I give is it's similar to running events, in that you can kind of make it what you want. Like if you want to, here in Boulder, there's the Boulder, which is a 10K. And there are international caliber athletes who do absurdly fast times. And then there's like people like me just out running with their kids, trying not to lose their kids in this huge chaotic thing. And then everybody in between. There's slip and slides down the sidewalk. If you want to hit the slip and slide, you can do that. There's bands playing, like it's a huge party thing. And gravel, when it's going well, feels like that, I think, to many folks. You can get in where you fit in.
Is that kind of how Mid-South fits in? Because that's the vibe I get, at least from afar, that
absolutely
it is one of the more inclusive events I've ever seen, and the majority of people do not look like me and you, crazy skinny guys ready to race at the front. It's people there for a good time.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think Bobby and Crystal Wintle do a phenomenal job of practicing what so many of us preach about gravel. Often, and every event's got its own flavor, and that's fine. Some skew more racy, and some skew a little more party, and this has all the things. And yeah, I think if that's one event that I'm happy to recommend to anyone. Like if you're trying to if you're one of like a very few handful of people trying to start a career in this crazy gravel thing, like that's a good place to go. If you're nervous about doing your first ever event, that's a great place to go. And it's not just the day of event that's happening, it's multiple days of gatherings and rides and music festivals and beer launches and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, Mid-South crushes it. So yeah, I've got to shout out to Ken Avery at Victoria for dragging me out there with a very skeptical face, in addition to Nick Legan is like bringing this stubborn old horse to the water, and I'm like, oh hey, this is actually super cool. And at that,
sure,
I went into that like, okay, this is a race, we're gonna race it. And that was the first year that Salsa had the chaise lounge. Are you familiar with this?
Yep.
This enormous red velvet, like Victorian era looking couch that they just drug out to the middle of nowhere on these beautiful clay red roads and dumped this like Queen Victoria looking piece of furniture there. And if you stopped briefly, they'd take a picture. And I just missed the plot completely. Like I was in the front group and I got dropped from that group and I was like, oh, I was like racing for like top 10 and like saw the couch and just boom, straight past. And that was, and then like that evening saw that the guys who went 1-2 stopped for a hot second and took their picture. And like that was the only thing that people who were not there would care about. Like, do they care about placing? Nobody cares. But like, oh, I'm doing it wrong. I'm totally doing it wrong. But yeah, if you want to be just super serious and weigh your food and all that, like you can race these things. And, Keegan Swinson and Sofia Gomez Villafane will happily serve up as much humble pie as you want to eat. But if you just want to try a thing for the first time and you don't want to wear stretchy pants, like there'll be a lot of people in jeans, stop in the smoke pot and have a picnic and then everything in between. So yeah, I can't say enough positive things about the Mid-South.
100%. And I guess that kind of leads to my next question. Not that we're going to try and get people in jeans smoking weed on the side of the road, but you had mentioned earlier that when you would run a cover with women back in the day, it wouldn't sell. And my question is, how do we get more people involved? Now, I'm not going to ask you, how do we get more women involved and then have two older white dudes sit here and solve all the problems of women's involvement. That would be like the worst possible thing we can do. But just generally speaking, Ben, how do we get even more men involved in this sport? Because it is beautiful. It's an adventure every time you go on a ride. It, for the most part, is a whole lot safer than riding on the road. And then there's the caveat of like, how do we get people into this sport that is kind of cost prohibitive, even on the low end sometimes. So there's a lot there I just gave you. Have at it.
Yeah. I mean, that's the question the bike industry has been asking itself since time began. And it's easier for me with my little brain to just think about individual situations than like, how do we change the world? It's like, well, JP, how'd you get into cycling? Like, what was it for you?
I was a runner who got injured. And Lance Armstrong seemed like a pretty cool dude. I wanted to be like him if I couldn't be a runner. So I got into it.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's certainly one way of like the aspirational from the media landscape.
Yep. Well, and this is why I asked the question, Ben, because that's my experience. And I was a college athlete. Right. I was hyper competitive. I've been an endurance athlete since I was like 12. And so when people ask me that, I'm like, well, I don't know. I don't know how to find the people that aren't like me necessarily,
Right.
So anyways, I didn't mean to cut you off, but yeah, that's why I always like to ask this question.
You didn't cut me off. I asked you a question.
Yeah.
I've been talking the whole time. You should talk more. For me, it was a combination of media. Yeah. Reading about things, reading Winning Magazine, reading Velo News. Like why I picked that up in the first place, I don't know. I was like maybe in a bookstore and like that. But then like starting to ride mountain bikes. Remember coming to not like head on, but like seeing another rider on bikes in a trail in New Mexico many moons ago, and I was wearing jeans and steel-toe boots and no helmet because I was like riding to the grocery store, but thought it'd be like more fun to go on this little route. And then here comes a dude with like a beer cooler helmet and brightly colored underwear, and we're looking at each other like, what the hell are you wearing? Turns out that was Bart Bowen, like two-time road national champion, great cyclist.
Sure.
He ended up becoming friends with down the road, but like normal people don't just wake up and decide to shave their legs and spend $10,000 on a bike and put on stretchy pants and go out into the world. Like there has to be gateway drugs, right?
Exactly.
So I think gravel visually kind of meets you halfway, right?
Yeah.
Like it's like a city bike. Like you don't have to change what you're wearing or your whole lifestyle to get on a city bike and cruise around. So I think gravel is a bit of an extension. So I think some of it's media, but there's no stars. I mean, that was one thing we were talking about at Velo News. Is like, okay, Lance was an easy one to put on the cover because his story was enormous and had been picked up by the media well outside the little bike world. For gravel, who are the stars? Like even if you're into gravel cycling, a lot of people at gravel events couldn't name a single person, like a single pro, right? Like, I don't know. Yeah. And those are the people that are there. So like, how are you going to get name recognition for people who are trying to get them all? So that I think another element is just like in your local community, who having friends or friendly people help. Like a guy that's been a lifelong friend now for 30 plus years, my buddy Tim. I remember like he was a guy that I somehow found out about a group ride and went and did it and got dropped partway through, and then saw him later and he's like, it'll get easier. Like just keep working at it. And like it was just like an offhand thing for me, but like that, or offhand thing for him, but for me, that was kind of pivotal. It was like a pretty simple gesture. So all that to say, like, wave at people when you're out there riding bikes, listeners. We might be able to hook some of them yet. And coming across as jerks is not just like morals aside, if you're looking at it from a selfish, like, how do we get more people on our side? Yeah, I think just being welcoming and friendly when you can.
Yeah,
You never know where that'll go for somebody else.
100%. All right, enough serious-ish talk. I always try and get you out of here on some fun ones.
All right.
They'll still dive into biking and all that good stuff. But we start the end of every interview with what we call the gas station question, Ben. And
Yes.
if you and I are on like a super long bomb gravel ride, and I'm talking like
I like
7
this.
hours of fun,
I like this. Yes.
we're gonna run out of food, and we're gonna run out of supplies at some point, and you cannot pull the Dylan Johnson answer and say, well, I'm just not going to run out. I never run out. We're going to run out. And
Yes,
we're going to have to
absolutely.
stop. We're going to have to stop at a rural gas station.
Yes.
It's got not a lot. So like you can't pull Chase Wark and say, well, I'll get a big fountain pop. No, you won't, because they don't have fountain pop. So what are we getting in this gas station? What are you getting for food and drink to get us going and getting us home?
Okay. I'm going to give you a two-part answer. First, I'm going to tell you what I had today. So today it was 74 degrees and it was not windy. So I just took the day off and then kindly asked you if we could record this podcast a little bit later so I could just go ride all day. So that's what I did. Full disclosure. Stopped at the Gold
I already
Hill
saw on
store.
Instagram where you stopped.
Yeah. Okay, so that's my answer. Like, what do I eat up there? I had a piece of quiche, which came with a salad. I had a piece of cheesecake, and I had a double espresso. And this is like Gold Hill store was magic because it looks like a beat old rundown, like mining town building from 100 years ago, which it is, but it's also got an espresso machine. So that's probably not that answer that can't apply anywhere. But my answer that does apply anywhere is like I go for whatever looks good when I'm there, which in gas stations sometimes it's just peanut butter crackers. But in New Mexico, we would often have the argument, being cheap bike nerds, like what had the highest calorie to penny ratio, and the Little Debbie's cream pie cookies, I believe, are the undisputed champion, because this may not be the case, but at the time they were 25 cents. To sound like the old person I am, like it was labeled on the package, 25 cents, and it was like 400 calories or something. So well before Tade and his ilk were talking about like trying to neck 100 grams of carbohydrates an hour. We were out there at the gas stations eating Little Debbie's cream pies with 400 calories of just garbage sugar.
What are we getting to drink?
I was in the not Red Bull. That's
Okay.
like some things I think. Like sometimes I'll eat things that people are like, are you going to eat that? I'm like, heck yeah, why not? Like, why not roll the dice on the roller dog over there and that's been sitting there for who knows how many hours? Or I was in Nebraska and they're telling me about spaced on the name of the store. It was like a very Midwest store where like breakfast, not just pizza, but like breakfast pizza was a thing. I was like, well, okay, sure, give me 2 of those. So like I'm very much a when in Rome gas station eater.
For sure.
Yeah.
So you said not Red Bull. You
Not
got
Red
anything
Bull.
that
That's
you would
just
do?
gross. Yeah, pretty much anything. Yeah, other things. I'm game.
All right. Fair enough.
Do you have a go-to? Do you have a magic go-to? Magic gas station go-to?
Well, I'll always get Coca-Cola.
Okay.
And then I'll usually get like a Payday or something comparable. But some of my friends, I spent a lot of time with Gordon Wadsworth this year working on a documentary about him. And he's got me convinced that anytime you're at the cash register and there's like something in like cellophane sitting there that's like homemade,
Yes.
could be like, he's like, you
Yes.
just got to get it. That's what you need
Yes.
right there.
Yes.
So
I agree with this. Yes, absolutely. And sometimes it's terrible, but like you got to go for it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, well, and he's from like Appalachia, so like it might be like a fried pie that's like 2
It's like
days
straight
old
up
or
pickled
something
pig's
sitting
feet in
there.
Appalachia
Yes.
is what you're going to get. You're going to get pickled pig's feet, and you're going to do it because where else are you going to do that?
Exactly. So
Yes.
when I go out for my first long bomb this spring, since it's finally warm enough here in northern Minnesota to go do this, I'm going to go look for that cellophane covered item and roll the dice.
Excellent.
So, all right. Next question. Are you a music guy when you're riding?
Sometimes.
Okay.
Sometimes.
What's on the Ben Delaney Spotify playlist?
My daughter, who is 18, heckles me that I don't know how to do anything, which is not entirely untrue. So I just have a single solitary playlist of liked songs.
Okay.
And so when I'm listening to music, I'll just hit the little like thing. What I need to do, which I think about when I'm writing, but never when I'm not, is I need to break this up into some like up tempo stuff and some chill stuff. So because it's just a mess,
Sure.
and I'll just like click through stuff. But I've got like Leonard Cohen with basically like spoken word poetry, and I'm like trying to push up the hill, and he's like, "Oh, you want it darker? We killed the flame," and it's good stuff. So that Sharon Van Etten's like, some random like EDM stuff that I've been listening to in the garage. So yeah, it's a mess, and I'll just like jump ahead when it doesn't hit the mood.
Sure.
But then sometimes
How long have you been anchored to this this cemented playlist?
Yeah, probably like a couple years. I just keep adding to it. So it's there's like soundtrack tunes in there, like movie soundtracks, like these big orchestral pieces with like swelling crescendo, which like sometimes is cool, sometimes like what is this? So my strategy could be better. I mentioned my buddy Tim is one of the guys who got me into cycling, and is still a great friend that I look to for direction. My dog is yapping in the back.
Oh, I love a good dog whine. It's okay.
Let me put her outside real quick. I apologize.
It's all
Come
good.
on, Mapes. Sorry about that.
Oh, you're the second interview today where we had dogs participating as well, so it's all good. Yeah, it's all good.
The dog's like, and another thing. I bought from Tim these little mini discs. I don't know if you remember these. It was like a step between like cassette tapes and CDs. And those, so I do rides where I'd have like 6 of those things in the jersey pocket, and then wires and cables going everywhere. And so I go back and forth between being like, this is ridiculous and stupid, I don't need this, and then being really into it. So,
are you listening to the mini disc player currently?
No, I have a.
Oh, okay. That would have been really amazing.
That would have been amazing. Yeah. Wish I still had that. Yeah.
It's all good. Yeah. Okay. So, really random question: are you into Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings?
Yes, both. Do
you have you got to have a preference here.
Oh, I got to pick one.
Yeah, this is important.
I would probably go, if I had to go, I would go Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
Harry Potter has, for me, like family sentimentality.
Sure.
But also, I remember like when they came out, taking one of them, I was on the plane to Paris for Tour de France route reveal, and Floyd Landis and I can't remember who else were on the plane. And like Floyd came by, he's like, "You're doing some like serious scholarly reading, because like it's a big ass book, right?"
Yeah.
I'm like, "It's Harry Potter." So that was not for my kids. That was like I was into reading. I was reading the books before the movies came out. So yeah, I think that's a great series, and the movies are excellent too. But on my own, I would Lord of the Rings.
Fair enough. All right. So you're kind of have turned into tech man here with all your bike reviewing and bike putting together, I'm sure. Is there a tool that you maybe didn't have before that you were like, oh my goodness, I didn't realize how much I need this, and everybody needs this tool? And if you say bike pump like James Huang, the interview might end.
I love wax chains now. So that's just, I don't know if little waxing pot counts as a tool, but
it does if you wax your chain regularly.
Yeah. So I kind of like gravel. I've gone from like solidly making fun of it to being an annoying evangelist for it. I'm like, guys, you gotta try. You don't understand. You gotta try. And it's not necessarily because it's faster, like you're saving a watt, which is fine. But it's just cleaner. So this is JP. Wax chains have improved my marriage. Like my wife banned bikes from the car for a while because there's like greasy chains on the upholstery of the inside of the car. I don't think they were from me, but she believes they were. Yeah, so just a couple weeks ago, we were going to go to Fort Collins with my daughter. She's checking out the school up there, and I was like, "Oh, I'll ride up and I'll put my bike in the back." She's like, "You're not putting your bike in the back there." I'm like, "No, it'll be clean. I'll bring some wheel bags and like, look, the chain. You can touch it right here. You can just touch the chain." She's like, "Oh, okay." Yeah, so that I am all about.
Do you have like your own little like hot pot, or do you have like the official?
Yeah, I've got
branded...
the official Silka branded kit. Yeah, good to go.
All right,
yeah.
Fair. That is a good tool to have.
Yeah,
so
and then just like feedback reflex multi-tool with a 5mm torque wrench built in. I'm putting up my hands like you can hear what I'm doing with my hands on a podcast. It's like a wallet-shaped size multi-tool that I'll often travel with because you can build a bike with it, make adjustments with it, and it's not a massive thing. So that's a go-to.
All right.
But yeah, unlike I'm no Dave Rome. Like, love my brother down there in Australia, but like I want to ride bikes. I don't want to work on bikes. Working on bikes is a means to an end, but I'm not gonna like fascinate over like what the best tool is. Like the best tool, the bicycle. That's the tool. That's the tool I'm interested in.
Yeah. You can't see over my shoulder, but I've got a bike I'm in the process of building with one of my daughters. And she said the other day, "I'm really excited when we're done building this so we can actually ride it."
Yeah. Yes, I appreciate that.
Yeah. All right. Last two. They're kind of 2 in 1. What is the gravel race that you have done that you're like, everybody needs to go do this race? And then what's the gravel Mid-South race? Okay. Easy. I figured that was the easy answer. And then what is the gravel race that you haven't got to yet that you are like, you can't wait to get to and do it?
Sure. For things I recommend to people, I recommend like do a big one and do a little one. So like Mid-South is a great big-ish one, but still has like a lot of the charm of a smallest one. The big ones are a scene, like Unbound is a scene, Belgian Waffle Ride is a scene. It can also bring a lot of cost and a lot of stress. So it's fun to go see the circus, and even if you're not riding, like to go participate, support your buddy, go see it. Like that's worth doing, and that can maybe answer the question of like, why are you guys doing this? Like, oh, I see. But going to a little one can the fun to stress ratio is exponentially higher there because like the stakes are lower, right?
Yeah.
And I still think that's kind of what the initial attraction was. Is like we're just riding bikes in. We're just riding bikes, It doesn't need to be a whole optimized thing.
Sure.
So like doing Cowtown gravel up in Kremlin, Colorado, and like the dinner before is in the local high school, and like we're all squished into these like fold out tables, and like you're eating on tiny paper plates. Like, it's there's no pretension, and So like doing your local little one, I'm a big fan of. What I'm most excited to do, it's always like, what's around the road? What's the next one? What's the next one? Like, and I think what's a boon for us as participants is a challenge for event promoters, because like once you've done one thing, even if it's a cool thing, like why are you going to go back? And there's a single handful of events that have this feeding frenzy around them. Like, a Leadville, not a gravel event, but like, where there's, a lottery or like serious restrictions on being able to get in. So there's a few of those where like you'll get repeat customers, but other ones, like once you've done it, you want to go do the next one. So one I'm doing this year that I've never done before is the Traca in Girona.
Sure.
I realize the locals are kind of over us gringo nerds showing up, taking over their town, but I'm still excited to go. Like I've been to Girona and ridden bikes there, but I've never done a gravel event there, so
sure.
I'm excited to see that. And that one's got, like a lot of them, 3 different distances: a 360, a 200, and a 100. But they're on different days, so that's a cool thing. As I still consider myself a bike journalist, as a bike journal to be able to do the thing and cover the thing on separate days.
Yeah.
So Yeah, I'm stoked for that one.
Fantastic. Well, Ben Delaney, thank you so much for hanging out today and spreading some of the gravel gospel here on the Stable Cyclist podcast, man.
Well, thank you very much. That was a pleasure for me. Thank you for having me on. Appreciate you, JP.
Thanks for hanging out with Ben and me today. Do me a favor, and if you enjoyed the podcast and you know somebody that could relate to it or would just really enjoy it, please share it with someone. Also, whether you are listening to or watching the podcast on YouTube, you should know that the Bootleg Miles vlog series is out right now on both platforms, where I am, through the spring and summer, bringing you with as we prepare to film Mahaday Back to the Start, the third film in the Mahaday series, where we will dive deep into what it's like to rebuild your life after a mental health diagnosis. And this series is not necessarily a behind the scenes of a movie, but just coming with me. For example, in a couple days, on this coming Monday, I will release a vlog from my time at Granny's Gravel Grinder in central Minnesota, a race put on by Wark Cycling Service and Chase Wark. So a lot of good stuff going on right now at the Stable Cyclist. Of course, it is the Gravel Gospel month, and we will have guests every single Friday this month, as well as 2 probable emergency podcasts. We'll cross our fingers and see what happens there. But an amazing month of loaded guests. More than anything, though, thank you for hanging out. And remember today, more important than anything you've heard, remember that you are loved.